Hi everyone, I'm here to talk about this book. It's a book called Crave by Tracy Wolff. So to start off, the reason why I started reading this book was actually because it was a recommendation I saw on TikTok, and it was saying like, oh, vampire books are so passe now. And then it said all of a sudden this book came out and it said it made people believe in vampire books again. And hi, cutie. Sorry, that was my cat. She just wants attention. Anyways, and then I was like, okay, that sounds kind of cool, so I'll think about it. And then I went to Target and it was on sale, so I was like, okay, I'll buy it. And then I started kind of regretting it a little bit when I bought it, because I was like, okay, well the font is kind of like, Twilight, and it kind of looks like that Twilight, like even though it wasn't an apple, but kind of the same. And I was like, oh my god, what did I get myself into? Now, I did like Twilight, I did read the books, I watched all the movies, but I wasn't like super obsessed with it, like I think I had one poster. I mean, does one poster make you obsessed? I don't know. Like, I've seen some people out there with like comforters and stuff like that, which is totally fine. But also I was like, oh no, like what if this is like almost as good as Twilight but not as much, and especially since my tastes have changed now that I'm older. It's been a while since Twilight came out. But then I was like, you know what, I already bought it, let's go ahead and read it. Right before I read it, I did read a couple of reviews, and it said a lot of stuff like it's not the greatest, or it's a really bad version of Twilight, or all these things that made me go, oh crap, why did I buy this? But like I said, I did end up reading it, and I was hooked after like the first 10 pages. A bit slow in the beginning. To me, it did set the tone. So we'll go ahead and begin the spoilers for this, but just so you guys know that there's a lot of romance in this book. So if you guys are like, oh, I just like a touch of romance but mostly fantasy, I don't think this is your book. I really like a lot of romance and a touch of fantasy, so this worked out really, really well for me. So it just depends on like what type of what type of book you like. So that being said, I mean, it does have similarities between Twilight, the whole some vampires have powers and some extra don't, kind of like Edward and Alice, ability to read minds and ability to see the future for a little bit. So anyways, like I said before, it does have a lot of romance in it, but what I think makes it different than Twilight is the fact that there's a lot more backstory. I mean, you get the fact that he killed Hudson, and didn't notice that it did do a little bit of changes, like you can't come in. I got that from like the Vampire Diaries, and I think True Blood. I have so many questions, like, what is that note that the librarian gave to Flint, saying that like there's 1,000 places to get to one. And I was like, does that have to do with trying to kill Grace, or does it have to do something with the future? Another thing is, Uncle Finn did not explain why her dad lost her powers. I mean, he said that they don't willingly lose their power. He lost it and he wouldn't answer the question. So I'm like, okay, what's going on there? And then another thing, what do gargoyles do? And how did she know that how did she not know she was one? I mean, I legit Googled what gargoyles do just to try to figure out like what she was gonna put in the next book. But so far I got nothing. It was just like, oh, gargoyles protect buildings and stuff, and I was like, give me more information because I don't know what's going on. I need to figure out why she's hiding. I mean, obviously she's trying to protect Jackson from Hudson, but still, I need to know. I have a burning desire. My jaw like dropped when that happened. I was like, wait, what? Which is crazy because you could even tell before, like, the beads didn't shock her when she goes into the room that her cousin Macy puts on the door. And another thing is when Macy was putting earrings on her, she was like, wow, you're so still, it's like you weren't even breathing. And I was like, oh my god, I never noticed that before. I did have to read it twice just to see the things that I missed before. I ended up like rereading it like right away. And there's a couple things where like I didn't notice, and then I noticed it later. The fact that they had that mate thing really pulled to me, because it literally enveloped exactly how much I love this book, just because I read a lot of fan fiction, obviously. I mean, maybe not so obviously, and Draco Malfoy from Harry Potter, and I would always read like the mate Vila stories just because I just really love the idea. So then I was like, yes, like, this is really good, like, let's see what's gonna happen next. And then I was heartbroken because I was like, oh my god, this book just came out like a month ago. I had thought it was out for a while and I'd be able to get the next part of the series, but no. So now I have to wait. I thought it was going to be a year, but then she just announced it a couple weeks ago that she's moving up the date, so I have to wait. I only have to wait 5 months until September, so that's really, really good. The one thing that did annoy me though was that she kept saying things that bump into the night, and I just kept hearing that phrase, like, I mean, not too much, I mean 4 times, but I was just like, okay, do you have any other description besides that? Because I mean, I get it that there are monsters, but you have to say that word so many, because I'm like, I'm just thinking of like pimples or something, I don't know. So that was my biggest annoyance, I guess. I thought it was super cute how it turns out the earthquakes were all Jackson because he was trying to control his emotions around Grace, and I was like, ah, that's so adorable. And I think it's funny how, like, how do you get a group of 400 students to be like, don't tell Grace that there's monsters because she's just a human, she doesn't know it yet. I mean, I get it that she doesn't have any other family, but it's just like, if her best friend was willing to let her stay there in San Diego, why would you bring her into this, you know, this world where she can't really protect herself, you know? And then you're telling 400 students like, hey, don't use your power to talk about anything, you know, until I tell her, you know, like. And then not only that, but once she does obviously get nicked in the artery by accident by Jackson's earthquake, the head nurse, Marzi, is that how you pronounce her name? She like bites her to, like, you know, fix the suture, blah, 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 which is fine. But then she goes, yeah, so you have a bandage there, but don't lift it up, okay? Because it's really gruesome. Like, you think, like, even to this day, like, I've had surgery before, and I was like, I just want, you know, because I just like, what does my body look like? Like, and then they didn't cover it up, or like, Macy can put a glamour to make her makeup look good, and you know, she couldn't glamour like the puncture wounds away. I guess they weren't trying that hard, so they tried hard enough to tell 400 students not to talk about it, but then it's like the little thing that's right in front of her face, like, no. But I mean, I kind of get it. There needed to be something to set in motion to show, you know, like, hey, vampires need to show up, because I knew it was a vampire book because of TikTok, but after halfway, when I realized it wasn't, like, they didn't talk about it yet, I was like, whoa, what's going on here? But I realize now it's because it was a lot of backstory. I thought it was a standalone book, and then obviously halfway, and then the book ended, and I was like, wait, what? Like, on this huge ass cliffhanger, how could they do this to me? But no, I like it, but I hate it at the same time. Another thing I enjoyed about this book is that it did have more than just, I honestly, because I knew it was a vampire book, I thought it was just going to be vampires and werewolves. So when I saw that Flint was a dragon, I was like, what? I literally had to close my book and then just stare at the wall, because I'm like, dragons? What? Which I thought was really good, really creative. I think that's why it takes it to the next level. It doesn't just, it takes a good storyline, you know, like vampires and werewolves, and then adds to it, because there are werewolves, and then adds the whole, you know, dragon thing. And then, you know, she takes other elements into it, like you can't look into mirrors. You know, now we find out at the end that there's such thing as gargoyles that have never been alive for 1,000 years. And then it makes you question, like, if it hasn't been born for 1,000 years and her dad was a warlock, how is she, but, you know, and that explains why Leah wanted her so bad specifically, and not just any witch and not just any human that she could get. I know it's gonna come out and to become a movie because Universal just picked up the rights, and I'm just like, I cannot wait to see what Jackson looks like, because I'm like so excited. Like, I see him in my dreams. I do know that somebody reviewed, I read a couple discussions where somebody said that they did like the book, but they wish that it wasn't in first person. But I actually kind of like the first person view. I'm gonna be really honest, in the beginning I didn't like how sometimes she said AF and OMG and things like that. Like, it just sounded like she was in a text message, when I was like, well, the author should really write that out. But then I was like, well, you know what, I had to reframe myself and say, like, hey, if I was a girl in high school in that point of view, well, how would I talk in my own head? Because it is in first person, it is her thoughts, and I was like, I would actually talk like that. So once I was able to reframe it like that, that's the reason why I was able to enjoy this book so much. I think that a lot of people really need to realize that too, that the prose that she's doing is in like a little teenage girl who's like scared and, you know, talks like this and does TikToks. I mean, if they existed in this book, but they don't. Does TikTok exist in the Crave world? You know, a thing that I did notice, another Twilight relation, is that it's near Denali, is that how you pronounce it? The mountain in Alaska. And before Edward Cullen moved to Forks, Washington, he actually lived in Denali for a few years, you know, until they grew too old and had to move. So I was like, hey, they use the same place. What a coincidence. think my favorite scene in the book is between the time when they're about to do the snowfall fight, and Macy's like, you need to stay away from Jackson, and then he's like, I'm not going anywhere. Like, he pops out of nowhere, and I was like, ooh, that's hot. And the first time he ever bit her, obviously with her permission, I was like, damn. So those are my two favorites. What was your favorite scene? I'd love to hear other people's opinions. I love that Macy's so understandable and the weight that Jackson holds on his shoulders. I feel like that's another reason why I think their relationship goes so well, because they just work together. That hard ass, like, I'm the king of the vampires, versus like this human girl, well, supposedly human girl, who is just trying to understand him and love him. I'm not sure if I like Flint. I'm reserving that he did try to kill her, but he had a reason to. So I'm kind of like, eh. And the book does talk a lot. He said that it's hard to find a mate if you find one at all, and usually you don't find it for like 2,000 years. I'm just like, well, Leah was made with Hudson, and Byron was mates with this Vivian person who apparently died. By the way, how did she die, and what's going on with that? You know what I mean? So I'm like, damn, there's just so many things that she needs to close. How big is this series gonna be, and can I wait that long? Anyways, so I mean, it seems like a lot of it. She says that mates are rare, but it didn't seem that rare because it was 3 people under one school who got one. And what does the tea do? I mean, it seems like it was supposed to make them like drunk or like pass out or something like that. But it didn't affect Jackson until he started sucking her blood, and then he was all mad and he turned ferocious. So I don't think they're gonna answer that in the second book. It just makes me question what it was. And how much do these people pay for tuition at this school? Because it sounds really cool. I mean, they get for like really nice chairs and forks and silverware and a not large selection of food, including for the vampires who get animal blood. So it's like, And if there is a turf war, how does he keep them under control? Why do people even bother going to school? Why do they have AP Spanish? I mean, if I was a vampire or a witch or whatever, I definitely wouldn't take AP Spanish. I'd be like, I got magical powers. I don't need to go to school. I thought it was pretty badass how, you know, obviously Jackson's like super powerful. Obviously he was able to destroy his brother, who was able to convince anyone to do anything. And, you know, Leah like puts him in a room that he can't get in because he's not going to get invited in. And then he was like, all right, give me some time. I'm going to remove the wall. And then bam, there's no need for invitation because no wall, no invitation. I was like, damn, that's badass. Like, he really is super powerful. What do I do for the next 5 months until it comes out?